You're having New Jerseyans in the house. We came down today. We got a meeting with Rodney, first time in 3 years. And we're also here to show support to you and other Democrats to keep up the good fight. So we just wanted to say hello, and here we are.
Great. Well, welcome. Glad to have you. And, I feel like I live in a parallel alternate universe every day here. So every day is more challenging than the other. But thank you for your engagement and your activism. As someone who's dedicated his entire adult life to public service, I passionately believe in the citizen activism that is so critical to a real democracy at the end of the day, and you have exhibited that big time both here and back home in New Jersey. We're in a fight every day for the essence of what our nation is all about. I have never seen a more consequential time than right now. And I have had the privilege of being here either in the House or in the Senate for 25 years. I have never seen a more consequential time. It's a fight for the soul of who we are as a country. Are we a country that will be known more by our intellect and creativity than our bombs? Are we a country that will make sure that we have the most highest educated generation of Americans to continue to be the global economic leader without being under a mountain of debt? Or are we going to ultimately slash all of those programs that makes America worthy of fighting for and dying for, put $54 billion into a defense budget when we are already 7 times more than the collective number of the next 7 countries in terms of and fighting against those who would roll back the clock to a time and place none of us want to go to. That's why the fight we're having on Judge Gorsuch, in originalists, the original Constitution didn't envision the rights for women that we enjoy today and still want to see progress. Woo! And slavery was a reality at that time, and we don't want to go back to those times and places in our history. And that's what this fight over the Supreme Court is all about. So thanks for your advocacy and your stalwart belief in a country that ultimately is a far better country than those who are in power right now envision. Absolutely. And so I appreciate your advocacy. I hope you had a good meeting with Rodney. I'm sure it was robust.
I don't know how good is the adjective you would use.
And I'm sure, knowing this group, that you had no hesitation to have your views known.
Exactly.
And that's good. That's the very essence of what the democracy is all about. So thank you for what you're doing. And I know it's
Thank you.
Couple questions.
It is, as we speak, it is going on. There was some attempt to see if a negotiation could be struck to preserve the 60, particularly as it relates not just to the rest of this Congress, but for whenever the next Supreme Court justice would be nominated, or to see if Merrick Garland could be put up as the next person if we agreed to this one. But so far that hasn't given any fruit. So right now, as we speak, the filibuster is underway.
All right. Senator Menendez, how can we help you as constituents and activists?
Yeah.
What really?
Well, I think what you do is incredibly important. I'd like people at home to have a better sense of what this means to them in their lives. You obviously, by your engagement, understand it. But so many people back at home in the midst of their daily challenges at work and family and trying to keep their lives together, taking care of a loved one, a parent or an in-law, and thinking about their own retirement and saying, I got to postpone it because I can't see myself retiring at that age. They're just so besieged. And then, of course, what we see in the media is so overwhelming to glean through. So my mind is every day when I work with my staff here, brilliant young staff, I say, how do we make these complicated issues connected back at home so people understand what's at stake? And so anything that you can do to help us relate back at home what's at stake. What's at stake is, I'm going to meet in a little while with the President's Economic Advisor, with members of the Banking Committee. Well, I want to challenge him. What are you going to do on housing? What are you going to do about, you keep talking about you want to touch Dodd-Frank, something that I helped write as a member of the Banking Committee. I wrote parts of the Consumer Financial Protection Board, which has been critical to consumers in this country. I want to know when you say you're going to change it, what do you mean by changing it? And how does that make a difference in people's lives? Because that Consumer Financial Protection Board has meant billions of dollars nationwide to consumers that have had either in foreclosure issues or credit card issues or a whole host of other. So connecting these issues back at home and getting the opinion makers back at home, which means our newspapers, our editorial boards, the editorial boards of television, radio, so that we can get a message across here, I think is a critical element of what I know I try to do, and I certainly wish you could help with it. Yeah.
It seems that the Koch brothers and that whole network has such unbelievable influence on Congress and even the cabinet and we don't even know the influence necessarily, but we do know. Do you have suggestions on how we can work to undo that so that we can really be a democracy?
That's why this fight over the Supreme Court is so critical, because at the end of the day, there's only two ways that we're going to go back to the idea that it's citizens, and a citizen doesn't include a corporation as a citizen. That's only two ways. Either we have a new case brought before a Supreme Court that has different thinking, and so who sits on the court is so relevant for this, for civil rights, for voting rights, for the whole question of a woman's right to choose, or we're going to have to pass a constitutional amendment. And of course, to do that, we need ratifications of 2/3 of the states. So that's really very difficult. So our course here is to change the court so that we can change the law. There's nothing we're going to be able to do based upon the court's constitutional decision, which I firmly disagree with, that ultimately can be rectified by a law. And so that's why the court is such a critical issue. So.
Senator?
Well, ending gerrymandering can create a new majority with a new law, but it doesn't change what the Supreme Court said. We need to change the Supreme Court so that they have a new decision on a new case that then ultimately renders it. I'm with you on ending gerrymandering.
So
we can't end up that. Yeah, 218 is the beginning, and we have a tough fight. You know, we have 25 senators on the Democratic caucus who are up for re-election. 10 come from Trump states, that red states where Trump won. They're going to have tough battles. They only have 10 senators up for re-election, and most of them come from safe states. So this is going to be a battle to preserve the very essence.
Senator, how do we get our youth engaged in the issues, the environment, healthcare, job equality? How do we get our youth reaching out to the public to garner votes for these issues that are so important?
I think that the only way we get young people to be engaged is if, first of all, if they understand what it means to them in their lives and in their future. So in a very practical way, young people who are going to college or want to go to college, they understand what it means to graduate under a mountain of debt. As someone who grew up poor in a tenement, if it wasn't for the federal government's Intel and Perkins loans and work study, I would have never gone to St. Peter's College, and I would have never graduated from Rutgers Law. So I am vividly aware of what it means. That's a connection that is very real for them to understand that their engagement can change those sorts of events as it relates to their future educational opportunities. And not graduating under a mountain of debt that puts a good part of their beginning of their professional career just paying back. The other, on the environment, I just hope, I voted against all of the, what I call the forced portions of the apocalypse here, in terms of the head of the Department of Energy, the Department of Environmental Protection, against Tillerson at the State Department because of his Exxon connections. And, at the end of the day, and the Interior Department, at the end of the day, we are in the most dangerous time as it relates to environmental challenges. We will see sea levels rise, which means the New Jersey coast that we all hold as a birthright for every New Jerseyan is going to quickly continue to erode dramatically. We are going to see places in the world that will face greater famine as a result of crops not burning up and not being able to move out into the marketplace, and that will create conflicts where people are struggling for food. you know, the very essence of this next generation's future, both here at home and in the world, and what it means to them, is at stake with the fight that we're having now. If we can connect with them that this is the reality and that they believe they can do something about it, because they're frustrated with the system and they believe they can do something about it, then I think we can get them actively
We need that.
Senator, would you agree
we hope
that you guys?
The Senate, I'm sorry. We hope that the Senate will have a real investigation, unlike what is happening at the House with the Russia connection and all the things.
Well, look, I so far am cautiously optimistic that what Mark Warner is doing with Senator Burr, who's the chairman, from everything that he shares with us at our caucuses, is real at this point in time. However, having said that, I have been and continue to be for an independent commission. I believe that is the only way we get to
Go ahead.
Very much all of the positions you've taken, we all, I think, very much agree with what you've said and how you've voted. One thing I think that many of the folks that in our constituencies are worried about is, though, you're very late to the party in a lot of these issues. And could you explain to us why it takes you so long?
Way, you know, first of all, for all of you who consider yourself progressive, I was progressive 25 years ago in the Congress of the United. I invite anybody to look at my record, which is why I have 100% Planned Parenthood, 100% NAACP, 100% Human Rights Campaign Fund, 100% the Humane Society, where I'm getting an award this year as the Champion of the Year. And, I could go down every organization in our country that ultimately scores progressive issues. So much so that if you look at my every quarter, votes taken in the Senate are aligned with votes of other members. And I would invite you to look at those scorecards, because that puts me in the 90th percentile with somebody like Bernie Sanders. So at the end of the day, I have a very considered approach about how I vote. I'm not reflexive enough, because I bitched and moaned on the Senate floor about Mitch McConnell and saying that Barack Obama should be a one-term president. And I'm not about to do everything they did the way they did and then stand there and say that I am pure. So I get to the right conclusion, but I do it my way. And at the end of the day, you'll have to judge on my conclusions as to the conclusions.
Well, speaking of Blue Wave New Jersey, you've been a big supporter of progressive causes, and there's no question that you're one of the leading progressives. And well, our group has always been there for you. So
we're in sync. But I understand the question. But like the question of the Supreme Court. This is my fourth Supreme Court justice that I've had casting the vote. I voted against Alito when I was appointed in 2006, and Alito's nomination was in the same year that I had to run for the first time in the Senate. He was revered by the Italian-American community in the state. I got enormous blowback, but I think it was right. I came to a considered judgment after time. I met with him. I asked questions, and then I reviewed his history, and I reviewed his transcript of his hearing, and I voted no, which took place just months before my election. So I had done the same thing with Kagan and Sotomayor, and I did the same thing with Gorsuch. It was my only hope that we would find a way to preserve the 60-vote threshold, because I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. When they go nuclear, I pray every day that Justice Bader Ginsburg is healthy, because if in fact she ultimately leaves the court, we will have, forget about Gorsuch, we will have Attila the Hun on the court, and there will be no way for us to stop it without a 60-vote threshold. So to me, I was holding out, having come to a conclusion on Gorsuch, but holding out with a couple of colleagues on the Democratic side who were in negotiations to see, would you agree to a combination of Merrick Garland and Gorsuch? Would you agree that if we preserve the 60-vote threshold for what many of us believe will be the deciding moment on the court, which is the next appointment, if we can vote against Garland, but maybe we let him through? We were playing with different opportunities. None of them have seemed to come to a conclusion. We will lose that 60-vote threshold, and that, believe me, in my mind, is potentially apocalyptic because of all the reasons we talked about. I'll take one more question, and then I'm going to have to go.
Do you think Collins and senators like Toomey are going to support the change to 51 votes?
I pray they don't, but I believe they will.
On calling it.
Good.
What can we do to keep out of a war? 45 is putting his foot in everywhere, in his mouth, wherever he can, all over the place. What can we, having the head of the appropriations in our district, do to prevent him from putting billions and billions of dollars into a war machine? He's taking money from everywhere else.
Well, you know, the appropriations process lends itself to have limiting language in any appropriation bill and in any continuing resolution, which keeps the government open after less short of a budget, and then in any budget language there can be such language. So the limitation of the power of the purse resides in the Congress. Limitations on how that money is used can be tremendous obstacles. And then something that when I was the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, I pushed very hard, which is that if you want to use force, you have to come for an AUMF, an authorization for the use of military force. Well, it technically is the law of the land, except that administrations, and I must say it's not just Republicans as well, have used their authority as they believe as the commander-in-chief to do what they call police actions. Of course, Vietnam was a police action as well. So
He's going into a war zone. This just happened the last, 3 days?
yeah, you know, that's why some of us are raising that you shouldn't be able to send the type of troop levels that seem to be going to Syria without an AUMF, without an authorization for the use of military. All right,
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.